all began on August 10th, 1985. Stephen Harkins, 27, and his girlfriend, 42-year-old Ruth Cooper, left their home in Tacoma, Washington, with plans for a quiet getaway at Tool Lake in Pierce County. They didn't return on Monday. They didn't call. They didn't show up for work. Families reported them missing. It was a strange, unsettling disappearance. But what was to come would be far worse than anyone imagined. 4 days later, hikers exploring Pierce County stumbled on Stephen's body. It was still inside his sleeping bag. A single gunshot wound to the head had taken his life, and nearby, even the couple's loyal dog had been executed. It was a killing that deeply disturbed residents in the area, sending it into a state of panic. But at the time, it was seen as an isolated tragedy, until it was discovered that there were darker things in those woods. On October 26, over 2 months after Stephen was found, a human skull was discovered at the end of 8th Avenue South, near Hearts Lake, just a mile and a half from where Stephen's body was. Dental records confirmed that it belonged to Ruth. 2 days later, on October 28th, searchers found the rest of her remains, her purse, her bones, just 50 feet from her skull. It was a horrific discovery, made worse by one unmistakable detail: a tube sock tied tightly around her neck. Ruth had been shot, just like Stephen, but the tube sock added something sinister, an eerie signature. Ruth's autopsy revealed that she died from a gunshot wound to the abdomen. The sock told investigators something important. Whoever killed her wanted her to be found this way, but this wouldn't be the end. On October 12, 1985, another couple would vanish under circumstances so eerily similar it was impossible to ignore. This time, it was 36-year-old Mike Reimer and his 21-year-old girlfriend, Diana Robertson. Along with their 2-year-old daughter, Crystal, they left their Tacoma home to find a Christmas tree and check out some animal traps. Later that same day, customers at a Kmart in Spanaway, 30 miles away, found little Crystal alone outside the store. She was in shock, and when someone asked where her parents were, her chilling response was, "Mommy is in the trees." Diana and Mike were gone. For 2 months they were missing. Then, on February 18th, 1986, Diana's body was discovered by a motorist near a logging area. Like Ruth, she had a tube sock tied tightly around her neck. From some analysis, it was determined that this sock was from the same batch as the ones in the previous case. She had been stabbed 17 times. Her death was brutal, personal, and it bore the same gruesome calling card. Nearby, investigators found Mike's 1982 red Plymouth truck. Inside was a note on the dashboard: "I love you, Diana," and it was written in Mike's handwriting. There was blood on the seat. For authorities, it was enough to point the finger at Mike, but Mike was nowhere to be found. For years, suspicion followed him. His relationship with Diana had been rocky. To make things worse, he had a prior record for domestic assault. The theory was simple. He killed Diana, left her daughter at the Kmart, and vanished into the wilderness. But that theory would collapse in March 2011. Hikers stumbled on a human skull, partially buried near where Diana's body had been found. It was Mike. Dental records confirmed it. The man long believed to be the killer had been dead the entire time. There was also a tree growing out of his skull. By the age of the tree, it said that he was there since the time of his disappearance. His cause of death? Unknown. There was no gunshot wound, but authorities confirmed one thing: foul play was definitely involved. To this day, no one knows who killed Stephen, Ruth, Mike, and Diana. No one knows why they were targeted. But one thread binds their deaths together: couples, secluded in forested areas, and a tube sock tied around the neck. The tube sock killer has never been caught, and the forest of Washington still holds his secrets. The killer's trail starts in November 1997. Newspapers began to whisper about a serial killer stalking the streets. Parents stopped letting their daughters walk alone, and girls began changing their routes, cutting through crowds instead of side streets. To Barnaul, Russia, where students came from across the region to pursue education. For many, the dream was to study at Altai State Technical University, but that summer, those dreams were snuffed out. Between 1997 and 2000, something monstrous unfolded here. A killer the locals would come to know as the Barnaul Maniac. The first known victim was Yana Shalamova. a university applicant full of ambition. She vanished on June 7, 1998. For a week, her family searched desperately, clinging to hope. That hope died when her body was pulled out by fishermen from the Ob River. Forensic experts determined that her life was taken by strangulation. Only 10 days later, another girl, Galina Darina, disappeared. Her body was discovered buried in Barnaul forest, riddled with wounds from an unidentified sharp object. The area where Galina was found would yield another horror: the skeletal remains of a third girl, killed in 1997. This find was particularly disturbing because her identity remains unknown to this day. In the summer of 1999, 2 more applicants disappeared under eerily similar circumstances. Svetlana Oparina was found dead, her body dumped in the forest. The case files began to stack. The missing person list grew. Then came the bloodiest stretch. Between June and August of 2000, 5 young women applying to universities in Barnaul went missing. Each of them was last seen within or around the university grounds. As part of the preliminary investigation, authorities conducted interviews with over 35,000 individuals. Several prospective students reported encounters during the exam period with a man who claimed he could assist them with admissions. Witnesses started to describe a strange man, a middle-aged figure posing as a university dean, approaching applicants and offering to help them with admissions. Police began building a psychological profile. They believed the killer was between 35 to 40 years old, likely married, with children, with a job flexible enough to frequently vanish without notice. Then in October 2000, a man named Alexander Anisimov was arrested. He was 45 years old with a record of theft. When police raided his property, they didn't just find suspicious documents. They found 2 axes, knives, a shotgun, a hunting rifle, bullets, and handcuffs. Not only that, after trying to deny ever stepping foot on the school grounds, 11 students positively identified him as the man who had approached them, pretending to be a dean from the Faculty of Economics. 3 days after his arrest, Anisimov confessed. While in custody, he made an unsuccessful attempt to hang himself using a jacket cord. Then, on November 1st, during a reconstruction of events at a 9-story building where he was meant to identify a resident he allegedly sold the murdered girl's jewelry to, he leapt from the 8th-story window, painting the street red. Notably, no further murders occurred after his passing. Near the Yonzi Village Cemetery, police found something that sent chills through every investigator on the site. 5 freshly dug, empty graves. They weren't random. One of them contained belongings from a missing girl. It was as if the killer had been preparing burial plots, getting ready for more. Shortly after, another skeletonized body was found in Barnaul. It was identified as Angela, yet another young woman who had vanished under similar circumstances. By the time the case was fully catalogued, investigators were convinced they had only scratched the surface. And maybe they were right, because in May 2023, the Russian news outlet Baza reported that police had arrested 52-year-old Vitaly Manishin in connection with the 1989 murder of a girl whose remains were discovered in September 1990. It was discovered in a forest near his hometown. Shortly after being taken into custody, he unexpectedly confessed to the murders of 5 students in Barnaul, which occurred between June and August 2000. According to his statements, he had posed as a veterinarian and director of a local farm to approach female students, offering to assist them with university admissions. During police interrogations conducted in September, he reportedly became confused and inadvertently implicated himself in 4 additional murders that took place between 1999 and 2000, including the killing of Valentina Mihalyakova, a confirmed victim of the Barnaul Maniac. Manishin is still being detained while authorities continue to investigate the possibility of additional victims. As of May 2024, legal proceedings against Manishin are ongoing. On Gilgo Beach, along the south shore of Long Island, New York, the sand keeps secrets, but in December 2010, those secrets began to surface. A search for a missing woman turned into a discovery of horror, a burial ground hidden just beyond the dunes. What began as a single search spiraled into one of the most disturbing, mysterious, and chilling unsolved serial killer cases in modern American history. They call him the Long Island Serial Killer. It all started with the disappearance of Shannon Gilbert. Shannon was a 24-year-old sex worker from Jersey City. On May 1st, 2010, she went to meet a client in Oak Beach, a quiet gated community on Long Island. But something went wrong. Shannon ran from the client's house in a panic. She knocked on doors, called 911, and screamed that they were trying to kill her. Her call to emergency services lasted 23 minutes, and then she vanished. 7 months later, in December 2010, police were searching the area for Shannon's body. Instead, they found something else. Wrapped in burlap, hidden in the brush just off Ocean Parkway, were the remains of a woman. Then another, and another. By the end of the search, 4 bodies had been uncovered. All were women. All had been sex workers. All had advertised their services on Craigslist. And all had been placed within a few hundred feet of each other. Authorities were now looking at a serial killer. Over the next year, the number of victims grew. By spring 2011, a total of 10 sets of remains had been discovered in the area. The hotspots were Gilgo Beach, Oak Beach, and Jones Beach. Among them were women, a toddler, a man dressed in women's clothing, and even a dismembered torso. Some remains were skeletal, others wrapped carefully in fabric. Some were just skulls and bones, separated from the rest of their bodies by miles. But they weren't all recent either. The deeper investigators dug, the more they realized that this killer had been active for years. Some of the remains dated back to 1996. Whoever was behind this had been hiding in plain sight, quietly discarding the bodies in the sand, believing that no one was paying attention. After all, the victims were all sex workers, who were often ignored by the system. Many had no family that they were in contact with. Many were runaways. They disappeared almost completely unnoticed. But not anymore. Shannon's body was eventually found in December 2011, half a mile from where she was last seen. Her death was ruled as inconclusive, with police suggesting she had drowned while fleeing in a panic. I'll let that theory sink in for a minute. Like many of us, her family has never accepted that as the result. Many believe Shannon was the first known victim of the Long Island serial killer, and that her final moments were spent running from him, trying to get help before he eventually got to her. In the years that followed, the case went cold. Tips came and went, theories flooded forums and podcasts. Some believed that the killer was a former cop or someone with law enforcement ties. That would explain how he avoided detection for so long. Others suspected he lived in a gated community of Oak Beach, where Shannon disappeared. The possibility of multiple killers was even floated, but there were no arrests, no confessions, just silence, until 2023. On July 14th, 2023, police arrested Rex Heuermann, a 59-year-old architect. He had a wife, children, and a thriving business in Manhattan. To the outside world, he was ordinary, normal, but prosecutors allege he was a monster hiding in plain sight. Heuermann was charged with the murders of the original Gilgo 4. Cell phone data, burner phones, online searches, and even DNA found on a pizza crust in his trash helped link him to the crimes. But the arrest raised even more questions. What about the other victims? The toddler? The dismembered remains? Were there multiple killers? And was this just the beginning? To this day, the Gilgo Beach killings remain partially unsolved. Though Heuermann is behind bars, he had pleaded not guilty. Investigators continue to work through decades of evidence, while families wait for the full truth. The sand near Gilgo still whispers. Shannon's final 911 call still echoes. And for many, the haunting fear remains that someone else, someone just as calculated, may still be out there. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters wear normal faces, live in normal houses, and bury their secrets in plain sight.